Thank you. Claire, first, my apologies. I didn't recognize myself. It was a it was a picture from years ago. So in that regards,
So we need a
sorry.
new one, please.
Yeah, sorry, I didn't jump in when it was necessary. Nevertheless, thank you all speakers up to now, because your content and presentations are, yeah, really great, and it was really a pleasure, and yeah, listening to you and your knowledgeable presentations. And yeah, thank you also for doing the groundwork, if I may use that work, and preparing everything up to now, to this point. I'm going to try to relate to yeah, the already presented content in these 20 minutes or so. We usually conduct such workshop in a 4 1-hour modules, and um, first three modules are focusing on on theory and practice, and fourth module kind of is where we do one-to-one deep dive. And since I do not have time, I set out today to be very short on theory and rich on practice. So I encourage, invite you to ask questions during the presentation or afterwards. And if you allow kind of to work in parallel with your problems, maybe, and ideas. Um, Anyhow, for further help, you can reach me or any technology transfer person at your university, or services that we presented with WIPO and EU IP Help Desk, who can help you with your additional questions. And for the purposes of this presentation, I will use words patent and patent application interchangeable, although we know there is a big difference between those two, because patent is in general a right which is granted only to you in a particular country, and it is based on the patent application. So that is the relation in a way. And after filing a patent application, patent examiner at the patent office, like EPO, checks its patentability, especially if the invention is novel and if there is so-called inventive step. And invention to be novel, it means that it has it wasn't known to the public before the filing date, and invention to have an inventive step, which is the second criteria, kind of which is um, the most important in my opinion, means that if having regard to all existing public knowledge, so-called state of the art, it is not obvious to a person skilled in this art. So if you have a patent, that means only you can decide kind of who will use it and on what terms. And of course, in the country, you were given the right, and for as long as you are paying the fees for renewal. And after 20 years, this is kind of maximum, this right expires and becomes public domain. And then everyone can use it freely without any terms. And this 20 years long monopoly is probably one of the biggest reasons why you would disclose your multi-million euro invention publicly. And there are a lot of patents, but still there are new and new inventions every day. And to know if your invention is just reinventing the wheel, or if it is novel and has an inventive step, we have to take a look into the databases and the public knowledge. And today I kind of have three goals or questions to answer with you. How to look for patents if we have a certain keyword, how to look for some patents if we already have just one relevant patent, and are there any other relevant patent related documents? And in search for perfect information, there is actually no end. And it is truly a continuous process where you find and analyze a ton of information to get to the point where you can say this invention might be patentable. And it also doesn't matter where you or we start, because you have to go through all of the steps, kind of. And in essence, it is necessary to find, those 10, 20 documents that are as close to your invention as possible and represent closest state of art. And in your patent application, you will have to then relate to those 10 to 20 documents. For the actual search, I would try to stand on your shoulders, actually. Your rich knowledge and expertise and experiences, and you're, sharpening, and we are sharpening our skills on Google daily for your personal and professional needs. And you know how to find, information. Um, so you know how to search, and searching through patent databases is no different, in my opinion, or specifically for this occasion. And it's very similar. And you're already aware of Boolean operators, tricks, and how to exclude and include some things, and so on and so forth. You're also aware about the technical jargon in your domain, I'm sure. Yeah. And for example, in patent language, Spring, in terms of a jargon, could also be a mean for storing energy. And jargon is used on one hand to expand the scope of the invention. It's a difference if you have to use round spring or means of storing energy, because if you use um, in your patent application round springs, you would and your competitor would build square springs, and that would be enough to circumvent a patent. So by using means of storing energy, you're also referring to squares and star-shaped springs. It's a trivial example, yeah, I know, but hopefully I got the message across. On the other hand, the jargon is also used as a strategy not to be found. We heard that today, and who would think that there is a patent for your invention exactly, that uses kind of means of to storage energy instead of springs. So last but not least, you have to keep in mind also we have at least British and American English, and that there might be a differences between them for your case. So keep that in mind actually when doing the search and when performing the search. So by that, I would conclude, the introduction, and now comes the actual kind of playing, if I may use that term, because you often go in circles, and you have to play with words, and you have to play with filters and that stuff. So I hope you're still awake, kind of, and I'm back referring to my 3 questions for today. So how to look for patents if we have a certain keyword, how to look for some patents if we already have one relevant patent, and the third question is, are there any other relevant patent related documents? So I will start sharing my screen, and yeah, and let's take a look. Yeah. So we have to start with some imaginative inventions. So my invention is a bed, kind of, which consists of poles like you would have in a tent. Yeah. So tent poles. So if we Google bed, tent poles, and beds, we would get some results. And if we would, take a look at what is on the web present on the Google, we would have some kind of results, and looking at those results, we could maybe also get some impression if there is maybe some potential for novelty, and if there is, yeah, or if it's not, actually it's always a good advice to go um, to perform a patent search, and to where, yeah, there are a lot of commercial and free patent search engines, and I will use only those that are free. And I suggest we first take a look at Spacenet, but also WIPO has its own search engine, which is called Patent Scope. But let's Google patent search, yeah. And if we Google patent search, then we are the first things is the search engines from various organizations that has this information available. And as I said, I will start my presentation with SpaceNet. And doing that, let's Google, yeah, in a SpaceNet detachable bed frame, which is kind of example that I've used. And if you use that query, you will get a little less than 60,000 results, and that's quite a lot of patents, and too many patents, if I may say, to review them all. So the first thing I suggest in these situations is finding your relevant classification. And that's why I'm using SpaceNet in this case, because they have really great classification search. It's just near the results, and if you click to classification search, you get the all the classifications they are for every patent. But to step further, you have to know what classification is. My favorite example is actually the pacemaker, yeah, which is the device that uses electrodes kind of to stimulate and which shocks the heart muscle. The same device is also communicating with other devices. There is also power source inside, and so and so. And it makes sense for you to know that classifications that deals with your field actually, and if there are several, of course, you would need to know all of them. And yeah, the classification is actually, I try to imagine as a small drawer in which you put your, or more correctly would be the patent examiner would put each of the patent applications. And what's more, yeah, as for example with pacemaker, the same application can be put in many drawers at the same time. So, but let's take a quick look at classification for our case. So if we put into the search detachable bed frame, kind of, you would get the results of the classifications. And by that, it's a really good way to start your search, to know your classification. That's my favorite way of starting. And if you would look at the results, for sure you would see the bed stats, yeah, which is kind of what we are, kind of the drawer where we are in. And that's one of the way. But looking at all the classifications, you would say that probably beds are in human necessities, because they are not in other classifications. And then you go deeper, kind of into the sub classifications, and you go to the furniture, yeah, and then you would go to here says beds, so it must be here, and then you would go to sofas, beds, and it's here again. Yeah, so you see bed stats, and maybe also dismountable, which is kind of the other word for detachable in a way. So if you one thing is to mention here. Here are these squares with the letter D. In these squares, you get additional information on the content of each actually subclass. So if you press this D, you have this additional information on what is here and how how this is kind of defined and what is not actually. Yeah, and if if you think that this kind of invention would be camp bet, then you would click here and you would go to another sub classification. As said, it's important for you to know that each classification corresponds to your kind of research field, and it's important to know which classification kind of corresponds to your field of activity. But if we click here on bad stats, and find patterns, we narrowed actually the number of results to more than 10,000. It's still too many, yeah. And but what we can do is just type things like and um, poll, because we are now looking only on in a drawer where there is everything inside. So if we focus on polls, because this is kind of also relevant for our invention, we see that we narrowed the results to less than 400. And here we can also see that poll was using, it's a name of a company. So we would like to get rid of this. And we do that by going to advanced search. And here we click that we would like to have search only in title, abstract, or claims. And if we, do it again, we are down to near 200. And, as we would like also to maybe to use the other thing that would be relevant to other to this invention, like joint, we narrow the results to 55 and so and so. And it's also useful to know that if your invention is not related to wire, for example, you can also use not and wire, and by that you narrow results also even more. In a way, I would end here, and I would review all the results and try to find at least one relevant document for my case. And I would continue by using different search engine, which is actually one of free again, and the engine is called lens.org, and you can start searching the same as you would, but my intention with this particular search engine is actually statistics, and I will show you exactly what I mean. I will copy the classification first, and I will put it inside of the lens, and it's searching, and yeah, and I will change the search not to the fields but to the classifications. And just a second. So here we are, classifications, CPC, yeah. And if we start searching, we get, for these kind of classifications, which is really narrow. So we are in a scope of the bed stands, yeah. You would get, in this particular database, there is even larger number of patents or patent documentation documents. identified or searched. And what is necessary maybe to, from this kind of perspective of this search engine is this feature analysis for your particular field. Yeah, you get the information how many patents, how active the field is. Also the information if these documents, are granted, or how many of them are filed by each year. It's really nice. Also, I know this information, how many of them are already expired, how many of them are active, who are top applicants. Yeah, from your field, this is maybe really good information on the companies that are active in your research field. And also regarding classifications, yeah, if you're not sure if your classification is the best one, in this section of analysis you get also information which classifications are used in those patent documents that are also in combination with your current classification. Yeah, so in this regards, this is very good for identifying also classifications that are relevant for your scientific field. And yeah, maybe really good information, top inventors. Maybe these are your research fellows or somebody you would like to connect to, or maybe to take a look on what they are doing in terms of patenting. And my favorite actually part of this analysis is top cited patents. And that's and this is because it shows kind of who are the most relevant patent in this classification. And I can imagine that if you would narrow this classification to really narrow field or scope, the content of these applications, which would be the most cited, probably correspond to your work as well. So now my next step is to answer the question, what can we do if we have only one patent? Yeah, and for that I will use the example from University of Maribor, and I'm going back to SpaceNet. And or let's start first with lens.org. And if you have just one patent, you have the number, and the number you put into the engine, and then you start from there. And the first thing you would notice is actually the numbers, cited. If the document is using other documents, relevant documents, or if some other documents are using this particular patent. So by that you see, that in this database, none of these results show up. But if you take a look at a SpaceNet, for example, so the other, and you look at citations, you would see that this document is using actually, some documents, but no documents are citing this particular patent. But in this regards, I like to use the next patent search engine, which is actually an engine from Google. And if you Google, so Google patents, it's a database from Google, and if you put inside just we so the case is that we have only one patent, and if you put it inside, you would see the results. And the best thing about Google is that they have so good engine that in the section where you would see cited by and patent citations, you would get all the information with relevant to this particular patent. And if you have just one patent and you use this method, you get a really good starting point. Why? Because you get the CPCs, you get the kind of the jargon as well. You get the documents that could be used for state of the art, or kind of define your invention as well. And even more, Google with its own kind of algorithms also kind of suggests you the documents that are not used either in patent citations or in. We talked a little about it, and you know, as I mentioned, we use 3-hour modules to go through these topics in depth. But for these purposes only, I will use only a SpaceNet and global dossier. And if you click on only on this link, it's a wealth of knowledge actually for this particular case. And by that I mean that all the documentation offices like EPO or WIPO are sending to the applicants is available online and free. Yeah, and all the letters from the patent attorneys to the offices, or from offices to the inventors, can be found in this list. For example, every patent has a patent search report, and if you would like to see, how the office and the patent examiner sees this particular invention, you just have to find international search report, for example, for this particular patent, where you would get the information which patent documentation is relevant and defines the the general state of the art, and yeah, and other relevant information. And also this is the way to build your portfolio of patent documentation and patents, which you are going to use in your patent application for your invention. And yeah, and by that I would conclude, because we are tight on time, and I would just end actually by summarizing why I suggested more than one search engine. And the answer is actually that they have different user experiences. So if you are trying to do all the work you would need with just one engine or one application, my experience is that if you use the free applications, you have to combine to get better results, because also that's the second point, they have different search algorithms, and results will not be the same actually. This is tested various times, and yeah, just have this in mind, that if you're performing the search on some particular topic that is of interest of yours, try to search, at least WIPO, so patent scope, SpaceNet, and maybe Google patents. Yeah, and by that you will get pretty good, results, I would say. And the third maybe reason why I promote more search engines than just one is because is that some of them have more databases inside, so they have more documents inside than others. But this is um, not necessarily always good, because it's task specific in a way. Because if you are um, trying to get one document you would like, maybe sometimes is better to work with an engine that has better algorithms than it has more documents. Yeah. So um, anyway, to use search engines at your work, it's kind of necessary. Just Google it. It's not sufficient. And I kind of invite always researchers to use the services that are available. By that I mean, the TTOs, the liaison officers, the law, um, and the law offices at their universities and institutions. And also, as Claire pointed out, there are various services and solutions, um, for you to use and to get good kind of answers to your questions relating to IP matters and inventions. And I like to conclude my presentation on finding um, IP kind of documents by good luck finding a needle in a haystack. Um, so by that, I'm ending my presentation. If you would need any further help, just reach out. And thank you.